Playing ranked can be extremely frustrating in Deadlock, with the game feeling completely coin flip at some points, and much more. My name's Zekfilms, a previous Eternus ranked player and current team analyst for Rose Syndicate. And if you find yourself struggling to rank up in Deadlock right now, then this is definitely the video for you. Like always, one of the best ways of helping out this channel is hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel, so might as well. But that's enough about that, let's dive straight in. Now, something that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, and that I see a lot of people making the mistake of, is completely ignoring the new pre-game system for ranked. After loading into a match, you aren't necessarily locked into your first pick anymore. You can see both team compositions, swap heroes, and even change lanes before the game even begins, and this is honestly an enormous advantage. Imagine you pick a character like Great Talon, and you see the enemy team has a ton of catch and rundown potential. You're seeing characters like Calico, Apollo, all these characters that can rush to your backline and completely nuke a character like Great Talon. Instead of forcing your own preferred character, maybe you might want to swap so you're not going to be getting 24/7 ran down. Although Talon might be your best and most favorite character, if you're just playing into your counters and you just keep getting ran down, well then you probably should have swapped. Now yes, you could be super focused on playing your one trick on ranked, but I think you should honestly ask yourself 3 different questions. What does my team need? Do we need some sort of crowd control? Do we need some sort of pick character? Do we need a frontline? Do we need an M1? Do we need a side laner? What do we need? Secondly, what is the enemy team good at? What is their win condition? Do they have a Billy with a Lash? Do they have a Dynamo? They're trying to play for their win conditions, so what counters that? Then following that, if you're one of those people that think they can, honestly take over a game, which hero gives you the highest chance of carrying? Those discussions matter far more than people even realize. Now, this next tip is probably something I've talked about quite frequently on this channel, whether it's from Marvel Rivals or even beginning of my Deadlock, and that is the idea of trying to stop blame your team. And it's honestly probably the hardest truth for people to accept. When you're solo queuing, you're the only constant. You are the only person that can change. Your teammates, your objectives, your characters change every single game, but the one thing that stays constant and consistent is yourself. So instead of being that person that's a hindsight Harry and saying my team should rotate, my support should help me, my team should do this or that, we should have won this fight because of this, you should just ask yourself, what can I do that gives my team the best chance to win? That's how you climb. The entire purpose of this video is showing you how to take as much control away from matchmaking as possible. Understanding this key concept is honestly a major factor in terms of like the mental warfare aspect of the game, keeping a positive mental attitude to keep your skills and stats up. But just regardless of the situation, you should always be thinking of how can myself improve. Now, sure, you can kind of influence your team just a little bit by saying, team, maybe we should go for mid, maybe you're a little too far and whatnot. That certainly is true, but at the end of the day, you're not controlling their PC, you're not controlling their keyboard, you can't move them around the map, you can say what to do, but the reality is, the only constant, like I said, is yourself. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this is sort of a concept that I created back in Marvel Rivals, and that was the idea of you being the concept, like I previously mentioned, that you're the only one that can take control, kind of like a science experiment, having your concepts. Again, this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, even myself at some points, trying to blame the team, when in reality, it is, a team game, but you're the only person that can control yourself, so these are just some things to try to keep in mind. Now, I see this time and time again where a lot of players go into every single laning phase trying to play exactly the same as they've done in previous matches against the same opponents, and they don't really change their playstyle, so they become repetitive and easily predictable. And realistically, your goal honestly changes depending on who you're facing. And if you're not sure what items to buy in the laning phase, definitely check out my itemization videos and my counter videos. All of those are great resources for you to understand what items fit where. Now, if you go into the laning phase and you're playing against a carry like an M1, like a Venator, a Wraith, an Infernus, and so on, your job is easily simple. Either shut them down or don't feed them. Those are your 2 win conditions. And basically how I always explain it to people that I coach and everything like that is that your whole idea of the laning phase is just to survive, essentially. Trying to sustain yourself enough in lane so that you might get a gank here and there, but the idea is you don't want to drop your tower, you don't want to lose a ton of pressure on that side of the map, and basically it's a game of cat and mouse. You're trying to stay in the lane longer than the enemy opponents, because the longer you're in lane means you're getting more souls because of the trooper waves, boxes, priority on side buffs, and everything like that. Those are the things you want to keep in mind. Because, for example, if you stomp a M1 carry super early into the match, they really never get the chance to scale because you can constantly roam on them. versus now your roamer is going to invade their jungle, your team could pressure objectives, and every time they try to recover, they're getting punished. And if you've ever played carry yourself, you know exactly how miserable this feels. You lose lane, you finally find a camp at the farm, and suddenly Haze, Calico, any holiday appears out of nowhere and deletes you before you can even do anything. These are the situations and win conditions you need to be looking out a ton for. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see is the mental mistake I see is people deciding the game is over because the lane went poorly. Whether they die 4, 5, or 6, 7 times, get it? No, not really, whatever. They look at the scoreboard and mentally check out because they say, oh, my laner is 0-10 before, the first rift is even on its way. Now, Deadlock doesn't necessarily work like that. Comebacks happen constantly and pretty much all the time, and why is that? It's because almost every ranked game eventually revolves around one thing, that being the mid-boss. Even if you're feeding your butt off, then around, 18 to 20 minutes, you win that one-side rift fight. From there, you go to mid-boss, then you take all the walkers that you might have lost originally. This is where these comeback theories and comeback ideas come from. Like, even if you lose a Guardian, a Walker, super early into the game, you still have routes and avenues of coming back into the game. I've won games where we're down a ton, Patron is dropped, but we win that one fight at the right timer when mid-boss is ready. We get mid-boss, we get the Walker, we get back into the game, and even though our Patron was dropped, we come back and win it all. I've had this actually recently in the past, multiple times, even today, for instance. So I think giving up in a sense is not necessarily the idea. You queued up for ranked, you're expected to play around a 40-ish minute game. So you better try for those 40 minutes, even if the game starts off really rough. There's always a chance to come back. And I think if you made it past the placement area and you're able to duo or solo queue, your entire macro should revolve around giving your team the best possible mid-boss fight in the entirety of whatever you can do, essentially. Now, realistically, if there's just one thing you can take away from this video, and that most ranked games are won at mid-boss. Seriously, especially in lower and mid-ranks, people have no idea how to close out games. They'll get a huge lead, spend the next 10 minutes chasing kills, and eventually throw everything because they never played around the objective that actually wins the game. So instead of asking, how do we team fight, start asking, how do we win the mid-boss fight? That's a completely different mindset. If your team has heroes like Dynamo, Ivy, Lash, Abrams, a Viper, or any composition that excels in confined teamfights, you should be looking to force mid-boss whenever you have the opportunity, even if the game is relatively even, if you are only slightly ahead, if your team composition is significantly stronger around that objective, this makes it a way easier fight for you. Now, another big thing that I see that I've mentioned in some other videos is the overvaluing or, over-needing of a Guardian. This is another mistake I see constantly. A Guardian is never worth dying for. If you're in a lane solo and you get jumped by 3 guys because you have the last Guardian, just get out of the lane, let the Guardian expire, let it get destroyed. You don't need that Guardian. The only thing you really care about is your walkers in, the endgame. Yes, having the Guardians up for a extra, shop instead of having to go to base or going to the secret shop is a nice addition, but it's not the end of the world if you lose it. It's a little bit of souls, a little bit of lane priority gone, but who cares? I think trying to fight for the Guardian, wasting all of that time staying there, and then you eventually die with the Guardian, you're just losing more than what you could have had. You have to understand that a lot of the game is just creating pressure around the map to be able to do other things around the map. If there's 3 people pushing for a singular Guardian and you're trying to solo defend it, that means there's 3 people in that lane, and 4 including yourself. Get the rest of your teammates to push a different walker, push a different Guardian, push a different objective. You don't necessarily need to play on the Guardian, you can play a couple steps back so you're able to get back to your walker before you even get jumped. Now, another big thing I think is communication. I mean, in the old matchmaking system, because everything was kind of centralized all in one area, you'd probably get people saying, it's just an alpha, who cares, the ranks don't matter, this or that. Now, because there's a proper rank system, and I put proper in quotations because I still don't think it's a proper system, but you get the idea. It's still a system, it's not necessarily centralized anymore. For the first time in a while, you actually have people, taking advantage of communication, calling enemy rotations, cooldowns, mid-boss, rift, missing heroes, even simple information like that. And I think this is something you should definitely emphasize on because I think communication, especially in a MOBA like Deadlock, requires a lot. If you're not talking and, communicating to your team, if you have a really good read on the map and you're not, translating that information, you can have one of your teammates die, then you lose the advantage. So just saying, this person's missing, could be going to mid, could be going to left, whatever the case may be, just gives that, teammate a proper understanding. To like say, okay, let me back up a couple steps. And now if they try to get ganked, they have that opportunity, they have that wiggle room to work around with and fall back to. Now, if you find yourself into this video at this point and keep asking yourself, I still don't really understand what I'm doing wrong, what I'm doing right, what can I do better? Join my Discord, let me know, send me a DM, and I can get you help with some coaching. Now, it comes to closing games. How do you close a game? One of the biggest mistakes I see, even in high-ranked games or low rank, is people and how they defend the patron. If the enemy team is guaranteed to drop your patron, you don't want to necessarily trickle in one by one, because you're trickling in, they're just going to keep picking off one by one, and you'll never have one more fight, essentially. You want the patron to get dropped if there's a significant amount of you guys dead, say 3 or 4, let it drop and then try to take one more fight, because everybody, if they died within a reasonable time, will be able to get respawned for one last fight. It's something I see time and time again, that people think they can be the hero in 1v6 and just jump in, whereas they could have waited 1 or 2 seconds and fought us 6 again. So, it's a concept of wanting to be the hero versus just playing for the team. And it's always should be, how do I play with the team in the right sense? Because the more players, the more numbers means the more abilities, in turn means more damage, with a greater opportunity of winning the fight and turning the match around. Now, the last tip or mechanic or whatever I want to give to you is stop mailing one-shot players, otherwise known as breaking rule 1. And trust me, I get caught. I'm no perfect person. I still do this time and time again. Let's say someone has 5 HP and instead of shooting them, people sprint in for a melee. Why? Because if I'm 1 HP, what do you think my last option is? I'm going to do a desperation parry every single time, because if I don't, I'm dead anyway. So you're just giving me my only win condition. So you just want to make sure you're not letting that win condition happen. Sometimes what I like to do, instead of necessarily shooting at them or going for a melee, is just running into them, their own character model, and maybe seeing them go for a parry, then you can go for a melee after. But realistically, if they're 1 HP, just shoot them. Even if it takes a little, a couple extra seconds, you're not giving them that one option or avenue to easily, get out of the fight with that last second parry, because it could be a character with some type of movement ability, like a Silver, like a Mina, like a Lash, for example, where that one parry, that little 2 seconds could make or break you getting that kill or not. But anyways, those were my little tips and tricks and theories, mechanics, ideas, whatever you want to call it, about this new matchmaking system. Hopefully these tips, allow you to climb in ranked. And if you need some coaching, definitely check out my Discord. And hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form. If it has, so do me a favor, hit that like button. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new. And if you want to see any other content, do let me know in the comments down below. This has been Duck Films, and I hope you have a great day.